Words can build an empire or burn a bridge. Every sentence you speak is a blueprint, laying bricks in the house of your future. And the truth is, most people are living inside words they never meant to say. Look, I've been there, saying things out of anger, pride, fear, and watching doors close that were meant to open. See, your mouth can't speak freedom if your mind is still chained to confusion. You can't demand respect with a voice that doubts itself. Every tone, every pause, every silence, it tells the world how much you believe in you. But here's what I learned. Communication isn't just about talking, it's about becoming. Because the way you speak to yourself shapes who you are. The way you speak to others shapes what you build. And the way you speak about your future shapes whether you ever reach it. This isn't about fancy speech or perfect grammar. This is about alignment. When your words, your heart, and your purpose finally speak the same language. Today isn't just another conversation. It's the beginning of your transformation. Words don't just describe who you are. They define who you're becoming. Brother, let me tell you something most people never realize. You are living inside a story you've been telling yourself for years. Every "I can't," every "I'm not good enough," every "people like me don't succeed." Those aren't just thoughts. They're construction materials. And you've been using them to build the walls of your own prison. See, the brain doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's repeated. When you tell yourself the same story long enough, it becomes your operating system. Neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on patterns. But here's the truth most people miss. Your words are the patterns. Every sentence you speak to yourself is training your mind to either expand or contract. I used to think I was just venting when I complained. I thought I was being realistic when I focused on obstacles. But what I was really doing was rehearsing limitation. I was programming my subconscious to expect defeat. And sure enough, defeat showed up. Not because I wasn't capable, but because my language didn't give me permission to win. Real talk. The stories we tell ourselves become prophecies. If you keep saying, "I'm just not a people person," you'll sabotage every networking opportunity. If you keep saying, "I'm bad with money," you'll make decisions that prove it true. Your identity follows your vocabulary, like a shadow follows light. But here's the breakthrough. When you change your language, you change your trajectory. It's not about lying to yourself or pretending everything's perfect. It's about choosing language that creates possibility instead of prison. I remember meeting a man who grew up in poverty. Every sentence out of his mouth used to start with, "I can't afford," or "people like me don't get those chances." Then one day, someone challenged him. For 30 days, replace every "I can't" with "I'm learning how to." That's it. One phrase, swap. 30 days later, his posture changed. His opportunities changed, not because the world suddenly got easier, but because his language stopped building walls and started building windows. He went from, "I can't start a business," to, "I'm learning how to build something." That shift, from closed to open language, rewired his belief system. Here's the practice. Mirror speak. Every morning, before you check your phone, stand in front of a mirror and speak 3 identity statements. Not wishes, not goals. Identity. I am disciplined. I am valuable. I am capable of growth. Say them until your reflection stops looking skeptical. This isn't affirmation theater. It's identity training. You're teaching your subconscious who you're becoming. And listen, some mornings you won't believe it. Your past will argue with your declarations. That's when you speak louder, not with volume, but with conviction. Because every time you choose empowering language over limiting language, you're laying new track for your future. The words you use to describe yourself become the blueprint for your behavior. If you call yourself lazy, you'll find evidence to support it. If you call yourself a work in progress, you'll keep moving. Language shapes lens, and lens shapes life. So before you speak today, ask yourself, is this sentence building the person I want to become, or reinforcing the person I'm trying to leave behind? Because your words aren't just sounds, they're seeds, and you're either planting a garden or growing weeds. Choose carefully. And when your identity starts aligning with your language, something shifts. Your discipline becomes natural because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're building yourself. The mouth is the wild horse. Discipline is the rein. Brother, here's a truth that will sting. Most people aren't failing because of bad luck. They're failing because they can't control what comes out of their mouth. They speak in anger and burn bridges. They gossip and lose trust. They complain and repel opportunity. Their tongue is their saboteur, and they don't even know it. See, discipline isn't just about waking up early or hitting the gym. Those are visible. But the hardest discipline? It's the pause between emotion and expression. It's the moment when anger rises and you choose silence. When gossip tempts and you choose restraint. When your ego wants to prove a point and you choose peace instead. Every word you speak is a decision. Most people treat speech like reflex, something automatic, reactive, uncontrolled. But mature communication is intentional. It's knowing when to speak and when to let the moment pass. Because not every thought deserves a voice. Not every emotion deserves a stage. I learned this the hard way. I used to pride myself on telling it like it is. I thought brutal honesty was strength. But really, it was emotional incontinence. I was spilling my feelings everywhere without regard for timing, tone, or consequence. And I lost people. Good people. People I respected. Because I confused authenticity with impulse. Real strength is restraint. It's the ability to feel something deeply and still choose your words carefully. That's not being fake. That's being mature. Because words, once spoken, can't be unsaid. Apologies can't rebuild what a careless sentence destroyed. Here's the thing. Your words reveal your level of self-mastery. A disciplined man speaks less, but says more. He doesn't need to dominate the conversation to command respect. His silence has weight. His words have intention. And when he speaks, people listen. Not because he's loud, but because he's deliberate. The practice is this. The 10-second rule. Before you respond in any emotional conversation, count to 10. Breathe. Let the adrenaline settle. Then speak from clarity, not chaos. This one habit will save relationships, reputations, and regrets. Listen, I know what it feels like to have something burning inside you that needs to be said. But ask yourself, will saying this right now build something, or will it just burn something down? Because fire can cook food or destroy homes. Same element, different intention. Discipline your tongue, and you'll master your emotions. Master your emotions, and you'll master your relationships. Master your relationships, and you'll master your life. It's all connected. And it all starts with the pause. And when you learn to control your words, you'll notice something. Your decisions improve, because speech and thought are linked. When you discipline what you say, you clarify what you think, and clarity leads to better choices. So the next time anger whispers, say it. Discipline whispers back, not yet. And in that pause, you reclaim your power. Because the man who can't control his tongue will always be controlled by his emotions. And emotions, brother, make terrible leaders. But once your speech becomes disciplined, you start noticing where your communication creates opportunity or kills it. And that's where we go next. Talent gets you noticed. Communication gets you chosen. Brother, I've seen brilliant people stay broke because they couldn't articulate their value. I've seen average people rise to the top because they knew how to speak opportunity into existence. The world doesn't reward the most talented, it rewards the most clear. Here's the brutal truth. If you can't communicate your worth, the world will undervalue you. If you can't explain your vision, people will dismiss it. If you can't express confidence in your ideas, no one else will believe in them either. Communication is the bridge between potential and opportunity. And most people are stuck on the wrong side of that bridge because they never learned how to build it. I remember sitting in a room full of investors, watching a man pitch his business idea. The idea was solid. The numbers made sense. But his delivery was weak. He stammered, avoided eye contact, filled silence with and like, and you know what happened? They passed. Not because the idea was bad, but because his communication didn't inspire confidence. 2 months later, I watched another man pitch a weaker idea with stronger communication. He spoke with certainty. He made eye contact. He paused for effect. He answered questions without defensiveness, and they funded him. Same room, different result. The difference wasn't the idea, it was the delivery. See, people invest in confidence before they invest in competence. They follow belief before they follow brilliance. And confidence is communicated through how you speak, your tone, your pace, your posture, your presence. Real talk. Most people sabotage themselves in the first 30 seconds of a conversation. They apologize before they've done anything wrong. They minimize their achievements. They hedge their statements with maybe and I think when they should be saying I know and here's how. Here's the shift. Stop asking for permission with your words. Stop softening your truth to make others comfortable. If you believe in what you're saying, speak it with conviction, not arrogance. Conviction. There's a difference. Arrogance talks over people. Conviction invites people to rise with you. The practice. Voice projection training. Once a day, read something out loud. A page from a book, a speech, anything. And practice speaking from your diaphragm, not your throat. Strong voices come from strong breath. And when your voice has power, your words have authority. And listen, it's not just about speaking well and big moments. It's about everyday communication. How you greet people, how you ask questions, how you express gratitude. Every interaction is either building your reputation or eroding it. I knew a man who got promoted not because he was the best worker, but because he was the best communicator. He knew how to make people feel heard. He knew how to frame problems as opportunities. He knew how to deliver bad news without destroying morale. That's leadership, and it's all rooted in communication. So if you want doors to open, stop waiting for someone to notice your talent. Start articulating your value. Speak with clarity, confidence, and consistency. Because the world is full of talented people sitting in silence. Don't be one of them. But here's the thing. Even great communication can't compensate for unclear thinking. And that's where clarity becomes the foundation of everything. Confusion repels. Clarity attracts. Brother, the reason most people feel unseen isn't because they lack value. It's because they lack voice. And the reason they lack voice is because they lack clarity. When you don't know what you stand for, your words wander. When you don't know what you want, your sentences stutter. And people sense it. Confusion in your mind creates hesitation in your mouth, and hesitation kills confidence. Here's the truth. The clearer you are about your purpose, the calmer your communication becomes. You stop over-explaining. You stop seeking approval. You stop filling silence with noise. Because clarity doesn't need validation. It just speaks and lets the truth land. I used to talk in circles. I'd start a sentence and lose the point halfway through. I thought I was being thorough, but really, I was revealing confusion. I hadn't done the internal work to know what I actually believed. So my words reflected that chaos. Then I learned something powerful. Clarity is built in silence before it's spoken in sound. You can't communicate clearly if you haven't thought clearly. And you can't think clearly if you haven't spent time in reflection, questioning, refining. Real talk. People respect the voice that respects itself. When you speak with certainty, even if others disagree, they respect the conviction. But when you speak with uncertainty, even if you're right, they doubt you. That's not about being loud. That's about being clear. Here's the shift. Simplify your truth. If you can't explain your idea in one sentence, you don't understand it yet. Complexity isn't intelligence. It's often disguised confusion. The smartest people speak simply because they've done the work to distill complexity into clarity. I watched a CEO once explain a billion-dollar strategy in 3 sentences. No jargon, no fluff, just clear direction. And the entire room understood. That's power. Not because he dumbed it down, but because he clarified it up. The practice. The one-sentence rule. Every day, take one idea you believe in and write it in one clear sentence. Then say it out loud. Practice until it sounds natural. This trains your brain to think in clarity, not clutter. And here's the unexpected gift of clarity. It eliminates anxiety. When you know what you stand for, you stop worrying about how you sound. Your words align with your core, and that alignment creates unshakable confidence. So before you speak, ask, do I know what I'm trying to say? If the answer is yes, speak it simply. If the answer is no, stay silent until you do. Because unclear words create unclear outcomes, and life is too short to live in confusion. When clarity becomes your foundation, something powerful happens. People start trusting you before you've even proven yourself. And that's where we go next. People follow belief before brilliance. Brother, you can have the greatest ideas in the world, but if your words don't carry integrity, no one will walk with you. Real communication isn't performance. It's alignment between who you are and what you say. And that alignment is called trust. Here's the thing most people miss. Trust isn't built in big moments. It's built in small, repeated actions. It's keeping your word when no one's watching. It's saying what you mean and meaning what you say. It's showing up the same way every time, regardless of mood or circumstance. I've seen charismatic people rise fast and fall faster. They had the charm, the stage presence, the magnetic energy. But behind the curtain, their words didn't match their actions. And over time, people noticed. Trust eroded. Influence vanished. Because charisma can open doors, but only integrity keeps them open. Real talk. Say less, mean more. Every time you break a promise, even a small one, you're training people not to believe you. Every time you exaggerate, embellish, or spin the truth, you're eroding credibility. And credibility, once lost, takes years to rebuild. I learned this from a mentor who barely spoke. When he did, people leaned in. Why? Because his track record was flawless. If he said he'd do something, it was done. If he gave his word, it was gold. He didn't need to convince anyone of his integrity. His consistency did it for him. The practice. The commitment audit. Once a week, review every promise you made, big or small. Did you keep it? If not, why? This isn't about guilt. It's about awareness. Because once you see the pattern, you can correct it. And here's the thing. People forgive mistakes, but they don't forget patterns. If you're consistently late, people will stop inviting you. If you're consistently vague, people will stop asking. Your reputation is the sum of your consistency, and your words are the currency of that reputation. So before you commit to anything, ask yourself, can I actually deliver this? If the answer is no, don't promise it. It's better to underpromise and overdeliver than to overpromise and disappoint. Because every broken promise is a withdrawal from your trust account. And when your words consistently match your actions, something magical happens. Your reputation starts working for you, even when you're not in the room. People will vouch for you, recommend you, trust you with bigger opportunities, because they know you're the same person in private as you are in public. But trust alone isn't enough to move people. Emotion is the engine that drives action, and that's where we turn next. Facts inform. Emotion transforms. Brother, people may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. That's not poetry. That's psychology. The voice that moves hearts moves nations. Because at the end of the day, humans aren't logical creatures. We're emotional beings who use logic to justify what we've already felt. I used to think communication was about presenting facts. I'd lay out the data, the evidence, the rational argument, and I'd wonder why people didn't act. Then I learned, logic opens minds, but emotion opens doors. If you want someone to think differently, give them information. If you want someone to act differently, make them feel something. Real talk. The best communicators are emotional architects. They don't just inform, they inspire. They don't just explain, they evoke. They know how to pause where the pain lives, breathe where the truth lands, and speak from scars, not scripts. I watched a speaker once bring a room to tears, not because the content was sad, but because he spoke from a place of raw vulnerability. He shared his failures, his fears, his humanity. And in that moment, he wasn't a speaker. He was a mirror. Everyone in that room saw themselves in his story. That's the power of emotion. It connects us to what's universal. Here's the shift. Stop performing, start sharing. Performance is about impressing. Sharing is about connecting. When you speak from lived experience, from real struggle, from genuine conviction, people feel it. And that feeling creates trust faster than any credential ever could. The practice. Story mapping. Take one lesson you want to teach and map it to one story you've lived. Don't just explain the principle, show the moment it cost you something. Because lessons without stakes feel academic. Lessons wrapped in story feel real. And listen, emotion doesn't mean manipulation. It means authenticity. It's letting people see the human behind the message. Because we trust people, not presentations. We follow leaders who bleed like we do, not the ones who pretend they're invincible. So the next time you need to communicate something important, don't just ask, "What do I need to say?" Ask, "What do I need them to feel?" Because when you move the heart, the mind follows. But here's the paradox. Sometimes the most powerful communication isn't words at all. It's the space between them. And that's where silence becomes sacred. Every pause has purpose. Brother, most people fear silence. They fill every gap with words, noise, explanation. But here's what I learned. Silence is not the absence of communication. It's the most powerful form of it. See, silence forces people to sit with what was just said. It gives weight to your words. It creates space for reflection. And in a world addicted to noise, the person who can hold silence commands the room. I remember watching a negotiation where one man spoke for 10 minutes straight, explaining, justifying, pleading. The other man said 5 sentences and paused after each one. Guess who won? The silent one, because his pauses communicated confidence. His restraint communicated control. He didn't need to fill the space. He owned it. Real talk. The strongest statement is sometimes the one you don't rush to make. When someone attacks you, silence is often more powerful than defense. When someone baits you into an argument, Silence is discipline in action. Because not every question deserves an answer. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Here's the shift. Learn to love the pause. Before you respond, breathe. Let the moment settle. This does two things. It gives you time to choose your words, and it gives your words more weight when they land. The practice. The 3-second rule. In any conversation, especially emotional ones, pause for 3 seconds before responding. It feels long. That's the point. Because in those 3 seconds, you shift from reacting to responding. And response is always stronger than reaction. And listen, silence is also how you listen. Most people don't listen to understand. They listen to respond. They're just waiting for their turn to talk. But real listening is quiet. It's presence. It's giving someone the gift of being fully heard without interruption. I knew a man who barely spoke in meetings. But when he did, the room went quiet. Why? Because his silence had earned respect. People knew that if he was speaking, it mattered. That's the power of restraint. So don't fear the quiet. Embrace it. Because in the space between your words, your power grows. But silence alone isn't enough. What you speak must come from inner alignment. And that's where the next truth lands. You can't speak peace if you live in chaos. Brother, here's a truth that will sting. The state of your words mirrors the state of your soul. Angry voices come from unhealed wounds. Defensive tones come from fragile identities. Scattered speech comes from scattered minds. See, communication training without self-awareness is just noise. You can learn all the techniques, master all the tactics, but if you're speaking from a place of inner turmoil, people will feel it. Your words might sound right, but your energy will betray you. I used to think I just had a communication problem. I'd snap at people, misread situations, say things I didn't mean. Then I realized I didn't have a communication problem. I had an inner peace problem. My words were just symptoms. The real issue was unresolved anger, unprocessed pain, unhealed trauma. Real talk. Before you open your mouth, organize your soul. Because you can't export peace if you haven't cultivated it internally. Your communication is the overflow of your inner life. If your inner life is chaotic, your communication will be too. Here's the shift. Daily centering. Before you engage with the world, spend time in stillness. Meditation, prayer, journaling, whatever practice brings you back to center. Because when you're grounded internally, your words flow from peace, not pressure. The practice, the morning silence ritual. 10 minutes. No phone, no music, no distractions. Just breath and stillness. This resets your nervous system. And when your nervous system is calm, your communication is clear. And listen, this isn't about being perfect. It's about being aware. When you feel yourself getting reactive, that's the signal. Something inside needs attention. Pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, what's really bothering me here? Often, the trigger isn't the conversation, it's something deeper. I've learned that the most powerful communicators aren't the ones with the best words. They're the ones with the most inner peace. Because peace doesn't need to prove itself. It just is. And that presence is magnetic. So before you work on how you speak, work on how you live, because your words will always reveal what's happening inside you. And when your inner life aligns with your outer expression, your relationships transform. Because communication is the bridge between souls. Love doesn't die from lack of feeling. It dies from lack of understanding. Brother, here's the truth. No one tells you. Most relationships don't end because of betrayal. They end because of bad communication, unspoken expectations, assumptions, misunderstandings that pile up until the gap becomes too wide to cross. See, every relationship is a bridge, and communication is the material that bridge is built from. Stop burning it with pride, carelessness, or silence, because once the bridge collapses, it takes years to rebuild, if it ever does. I've watched marriages crumble not because love died, but because two people stopped speaking the same language. One person needed words of affirmation, the other showed love through actions. Both were giving love, neither was receiving it. That's not a love problem. That's a translation problem. Real talk, most conflict isn't about the issue. It's about how the issue was communicated. Tone, timing, and approach matter more than the message itself. You can say the right thing the wrong way and destroy everything. Or you can say a hard thing the right way and strengthen the bond. Here's the shift. Learn to listen without defending and speak without attacking. That's the foundation of healthy communication. When someone shares pain, don't immediately explain yourself. Just listen. Let them be heard. Because being heard is 80% of healing. The practice, the mirror technique. When someone expresses something important, repeat it back to them before you respond. What I'm hearing you say is, this does two things. It ensures you understood correctly, and it shows them you're listening. Most arguments happen because people are responding to what they think was said, not what was actually said. And listen, communication and relationships isn't just about talking, it's about creating safety. When people feel safe with you, they'll tell you the truth. When they don't, they'll tell you what you want to hear. And that's when relationships die, not from lies, but from silence. I knew a couple who never fought. Everyone thought they were perfect, but beneath the surface, resentment was building. Neither felt safe to express hurt, so they just smiled through the pain. Until one day, the bridge collapsed. And by then, it was too late. So speak the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Don't let silence rot your relationships from the inside, because unspoken words become unhealed wounds. And unhealed wounds become walls. Guard the bridge. Speak with love, even when you're hurt. Listen with humility, even when you're right. Because relationships aren't about winning arguments, they're about building understanding. And when your communication builds bridges instead of walls, you'll notice something. Your entire life starts aligning. Because healthy communication isn't just a skill. It's a spiritual practice that transforms everything it touches. Look how far you've come. You started believing your words didn't matter. That communication was just noise, just filler. just something that happened between thoughts. But now you see the truth. Every word you speak is a seed. Every sentence you say is a brick. Every conversation you have is shaping the architecture of your future. You learned that your words build your identity, that the story you tell yourself becomes the life you live. You stopped rehearsing limitation and started declaring possibility. You picked up the pen and rewrote your internal script, not with lies, but with language that gives you permission to grow. Then you discovered discipline. You learned that the mouth is a wild horse and restraint is the rein. You stopped letting emotion hijack your tongue. You practiced the pause, that sacred space between feeling and speaking where power is born. You learned that silence isn't weakness. It's punctuation for strength. You saw that communication opens doors, discipline can't. That talent gets you noticed, but clarity gets you chosen. You stopped hiding your value behind vague words. You spoke with conviction. You articulated your worth. And opportunities started appearing because the world finally understood what you were offering. Clarity became your foundation. You realized confusion repels and clarity attracts. You simplified your truth until it sounded like wisdom. And when you spoke, people listened, not because you were loud, but because you were clear. You built trust through consistency. You learned that charisma might open doors, but integrity keeps them open. You kept your word, even when it was hard. And your reputation started working for you in rooms you'd never entered. You tapped into emotion without manipulation. You learned that facts inform, but feeling transforms. You stopped performing and started sharing. You spoke from scars, not scripts, and hearts opened because vulnerability is the universal language. You embraced silence as power. You learned to hold the pause with confidence. You stopped fearing the quiet and started commanding it. Because you realized that sometimes the strongest statement is the one you don't rush to make. You fixed the source, not just the symptom. You understood that your words reflect your inner state. So you organized your soul before you opened your mouth. You cultivated peace internally, so you could communicate it externally. And you guarded the bridge of relationship. You learned that love doesn't die from lack of feeling. It dies from lack of understanding. You spoke truth with kindness. You listened without defending. And the people around you started feeling safe enough to stay. Now you stand at the intersection of becoming. You are no longer the person who speaks carelessly and wonders why doors stay closed. You are the one who knows that every word is a choice, every sentence is a direction, every conversation is an opportunity. You are no longer controlled by emotion, you direct it. You are no longer confused in speech, you command it. You are no longer speaking from chaos, you communicate from clarity. You are no longer hoping to be heard. You speak with authority that demands listening. Because you've learned the most important truth of all. Communication isn't just a skill. It's the bridge between who you are and who you're becoming. It's the tool that builds empires and the weapon that protects peace. It's the difference between living in silence and leading with sound. Your words are not random. They are creative force. They shape reality. They call things into existence. They organize chaos into order. They turn vision into action. They transform minds. They move hearts. They build worlds. So speak like your future is listening, because it is. Speak like your children will inherit your vocabulary, because they will. Speak like your legacy depends on your language, because it does. Speak like every sentence is a contract with destiny, because every sentence is. The world doesn't respond to what you wish. It responds to what you declare. So declare your worth. Declare your vision. Declare your purpose. Not with arrogance, but with certainty. Not with volume, but with conviction. And when doubt whispers, "Who are you to speak like this?" remind it. You are someone who learned that silence is expensive, that confusion is costly, that careless words are chains, and that aligned communication is freedom. You are the architect of your future, and your words are the blueprint. You are the author of your story, and your voice is the pen. You are the bridge between potential and reality, and communication is the path. So build with intention. Speak with precision. Listen with presence. Pause with power. Because the life you want, the relationships you crave, the success you dream of, they're all waiting on the other side of a conversation done right. And you now know how to do it right. You've leveled up your communication, which means you've leveled up your life. Now go speak your destiny into existence, because the world is listening, and so is your future. Speak.